and welcome to The Rooted Readers. And we are back with another book reaction. This book very close to home. Obviously, you see the Houston, Texas. We are actually from Houston, Texas. So when I heard that J. Prince had a book coming out, I knew I had to get it. A little backstory. I grew up on the north side of Houston in like on the outer skirts of the city, but I went to school in the inner city, actually in the neighborhood. I went to school in the neighborhood that J. Prince grew up in. My mom grew up in that neighborhood and then sent us back to those schools when we were younger. So I heard about J. Prince all the time, like when I was in middle school. The kids would go to this place called the Hester House, and they'd always be talking about, like, you know, I think he did like toy drives for Christmas, and like they were always talking about, like, if J. Prince showed up to any of those places or whatever, if he was gonna be somewhere in the neighborhood that weekend giving something out. I always heard about it, but of course, since I didn't live in the area, I had never seen J. Prince. When we bought this book, we read the book, and then we went to a book signing for him. So we read the book, and then, well, first of all, I got so excited we didn't even talk about the name of the book. So today we are reacting to The Art and Science of Respect by James Prince. So, do you want to give a summary before I start going all crazy?
So it's basically just the things that he goes through, and the road it took for him to become how successful he is today, and all like the traumatic experiences, the things that he went through, just stuff like that, and how it led up to him becoming a very successful man. So.
Yeah, which I was surprised. Okay, so that little backstory. I went to school. You'll be able to get that, right? Okay, so like I told you, I went to school in the 5th Ward area, bless you, but I lived on the north side. I lived on the outskirts of Houston. So I went to Brook Hollow Church, and so for the longest we had children's church in the Prince Chapel. So I'm reading this book, and I'm like, I think I was reading it in our guest house, right? That's where I used to go to get my little private time. I would go read in the guest house. So I'm in the guest house and I'm reading, and I realize it talks about how James Prince donated money to Brook Hollow, so they named the Prince Chapel after him. I went to Brook Hollow for at least 15, 20 years, and never realized that, one, James Prince went to, it seems so weird calling him James Prince, that J. Prince attended Brook Hollow, and I definitely didn't know the Prince Chapel was the Prince Chapel. So do you remember when I found that out?
Yeah, because before, like a long time ago, the guest house would just be where I had my stuff set up, and so I was recording. I think I was recording like a video cover or something, like a music cover, and so all of it, like, you're reading in there, so you're just sitting there, and so all of a sudden I think I turned the camera on or something, and you said the something is like the Prince Chapel, and oh my God, this is so cool. And I was like, huh? Like, I don't even think I had read that. I hadn't read.
Oh yeah, he hadn't read it by then. But it was just so cool to me that, like, there were hardly ever any connections. So, like, my life at school was completely different from my life at home, and like they never crossed. So like any friends that I saw at school, I'd never see them at school. I mean, I'd never see them once I got home, because I lived like 30 to 40 minutes away from my friends. And then of course church was even further away from my house, so nothing connected school and church. So I never knew that all this time I was at the Prince Chapel, which was named after J. Prince. So that was really cool too. And I just really, I made David read it after, because I really liked his work ethic. Like, I'm 32 now and just started, well, I'm 2 years into entrepreneurship, and I keep telling him, like, that was too late to start. So when I read this book, and I noticed that, like, he was a kid, like, selling chickens, and what else did he do? Fix bikes or something. It was something else that he did. So I can go on and on. So I'm gonna let you go before I just go completely overboard with it. What's some things that you learned, or that you liked, or that you took away from the book?
One thing that I liked was how like I like to sing, and this book is all about Jay Prince. And Jay Prince had a record label, and it really just taught me a lot about the music industry. But yeah, so it was really there was a lot of information given on the music industry and about the industry, and how to become successful in the music industry. So that was one thing that I really liked about the
What did you learn about how hard he worked? Because a part of my like, and I've seen like, I don't know, I can't think of his children. Like, Dad has talked about his children, and he told me that like there are some that are in the music industry. He said that there are some that like have clothing lines, and then I think somebody has another, I can't remember what he said, but there's some, like all of them basically have different businesses. And I'm struggling with like how do we right now, because I think his struggle created a certain work ethic in him, and then he instilled that in his children. So not having a history of being surrounded by entrepreneurs, like we're trying to figure out how do we give that to them without making them struggle to feel like they need it. So what did you learn about work ethic from reading this book?
I learned that you're gonna you have to work very, very hard to get anywhere in life. You're gonna have to work hard. That's one thing that he really talks about. Another thing is just how I remember there was a part in this book actually where it was like there's different little pictures in the book. He was standing in front of some apartment homes, and he talked about how like his grandmother used to live in those apartments, and sometimes whenever she couldn't afford the rent, she'd tell him to go tell the rent person that she's not here. And then he said now he owns those apartments.
That's cool. That's like, really cool.
He bought the apartments that his grandmother once couldn't afford the rent on, and that was like, wow, like to even, like I've always thought of like buying like dad's old neighborhood. Like I've never like said like, oh.
And I think this makes it seem possible, you know, like,
yeah, like
it really made me think about like, I always tell people I didn't grow up in Fifth Ward, but I was there for 8 hours a day because that's where I went to school at. But I didn't even start, like, I had everything that I could imagine growing up. I didn't, you know, I've never had any of the struggles similar to what he had, or any of the struggles that my peers at school went through. Like I just didn't go through any of those things. So I feel like I should be, like I kind of had a head start, you know, because I already didn't have to climb out of poverty or anything like that. But seeing that he was able to do that, and by my age already, you know, had a music label and had already made money in different, I don't know if the boxing thing was already going by then, but he had already made had already created different streams of income already by my age. So I'm like, dang, like I'm behind. But that's one of the reasons I let you read this book as well, because I feel like just as an educator, and you know, I went through college and got my master's and all this good stuff, but it didn't prepare me for real life. Like it didn't prepare me for the things that I actually want to purchase. Like had I stayed a teacher, or had I stayed a counselor or whatever, even as an administrator, I didn't make the money that I wanted to be able to do all the different things that I wanted to do. And so now when we tell Dave, like, you know, like we break down, like this is how much it costs for our business, this is whatever, and like these are our goals, you know, we want properties and things like that. Like this is, I kind of use this book to show him like this is why, because you want to be comfortable enough. Like I think not too long ago, I feel like I heard that he bought an island or something.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Bought an island.
Like
so,
he actually bought one.
Yeah, and then he has like this big ranch or whatever with like all these acres of land. So like it was really motivational, not just as somebody who went to school in the area that he grew up in, but just like having parents or having like so many relatives that just have not reached, you know, like a percentage of what he's made over his lifetime. And it just kind of lets you know that like anything is attainable if you want it bad enough and you work at it hard enough. So that like that's one of the things that I really like. That's the reason that you recently read the Nipsey Hussle book.
Oh, yeah.
Like I want you to see different people getting things in different ways, because when I went to school, well, when I was your age, it was go to college, go to college, go to college. Your mom went to college, and since my mom was making more money than those around us, so she made more money than my friends' parents, and she made more money than like my cousins' parents and things like that. It was like, okay, go be her, but we didn't know about these examples.
And it's funny because not just her, but everybody. Like there's a lot of times like I personally, it's not like my main goal to get into college, but if it comes down to it, yeah, like that's not an option. So a lot of people are like saying like, hey, whenever you get to college or whenever you do this, I'm like, and I'll be like, I don't really want to go to college, and they'll be like, oh, that's, some people say it's bad, some people try to push me into like, hey, I think you should really do it. And another time was like somebody was like, oh wow, college was one of the best times of my life. I had all this fun, and I still didn't want to go. And I feel like everybody sees college as like this big accomplishment, but at the end of the day, if you have something going on at the age of 6, at the age of 10, college doesn't have to be a main accomplishment. A main accomplishment.
Yeah, because I think he accomplished way. Not I think, I know that he accomplished way more than I did by my age. And for the longest, like my biggest thing was, you know, since I had you early, like the biggest thing was, okay, well, she's not going to graduate from college. So I thought like the biggest thing I could accomplish was finishing college. And then when I got my master's, it was like, okay, well, that was another thing. And that was like by like 24, I had done all that. But then once I realized like what I was going to be paid, like, well, the cap salary that I could end with if I continued this career for, you know, and retired of it like my mom did, like, that wasn't going to do it.
Do you think if you had this book, would you, while you were like, what, 20, do you think you would be in a whole different situation?
Not necessarily if I had this book, but if I had the mentality that he has. So not the resources. Like I don't think he really had any resources. Like everything that he wanted, he went and got. He went and learned himself. So if I had that mentality at 20, because he had a child early as well, but I think the biggest thing that I got from this book was that mentality is so important. Another thing that I wanted you to get out, and what I started doing a while ago, and when I saw it in this book, I was like, oh, this is cool, is like, okay, cool, you're not gonna go to college, whatever, like, if that's not what you want to do. And I guess people get really upset. People get just as upset at me, because the moment they hear their child, or the moment they hear my child say, oh yeah, I don't even know if I'm going to college, then their first thing is like, okay, like tell him he's going, because that's what my mom said, like, you're going to college. So, and they look at me and they're like, well, why don't you have something to say about that? Like, you went to college and you went and got a master's and all that, but that's all I knew. So people get equally as upset with me because they feel like I'm supposed to say like, no, you're going to college. The biggest thing that I got from this book was that he had a plan. And so oftentimes before even doing this, like, I'm one of those people, I don't know if I've said it on this channel or not, but like, I have a list from everything. Like, from the time I think y'all saw y'all saw a notebook where I was like 10 or 11,
yeah.
And I had a list of like, this is what age I want to do this by. And I've made one like at least every year of my life, because I want to make sure that like I have goals set. So even if you plan on not going to college, you got to have some type of plan. Because that's one thing he had, was a plan. Like, he knew what he wanted to do, and he set out to do it to make sure that it happened, and he worked really, really hard for it. So that's like the biggest thing that I would say. Like, okay, just like college gives you go in there and it's like, okay, You have to take this class at this age, this class at that age. That's the hard part about entrepreneurship. That's the hardest thing that I'm learning about entrepreneurship. There's nobody there to tell me, do this on this day, do that on that day, so you can make this on this day and that on that day. So there are times like I've had to learn the hard way that like there has to be some structure set up. And on, you just had this page opened up. There's a page where he shows us his little, not his little, but his a picture of his notebook where he wrote out all the things that he wanted to accomplish. And I think it's so cool because he did, okay, it's in here somewhere, but he did what I see a lot. It's okay. He did what I think a lot of educators, and one of the reasons that I left education, he did what they don't naturally do for black and brown children. He set expectations for himself. So as an educator, it's like, okay, if we got black or brown kids and they're coming from Fifth Ward, if they're coming from Acres Home, they're coming from Studewood or whatever, they already have like a bar set for them, and they already know that they're not going to exceed this bar. So it's kind of like, okay, well, if the people who were supposed to teach me and the people who are supposed to do these things didn't set expectations for me, like why should I set them for myself? And if you haven't been exposed to different options outside of the ones that you see, most likely you aren't going to know where to set the bar as well. So I think that's the difference between a lot of people who are, a lot of our friends, a lot of our family members, shoot, me growing up and, you know, being in that type of environment, is that we just didn't have a plan. We didn't search for other options or try to expose ourselves to other options. He knew he wanted money, so he figured out the best possible way to make it. Like, and that's like, if that's your thing and you don't want anybody, I tell you all the time, the reason that one of the reasons, I won't say the main, but one of the reasons that I left is because what I love to do, which was counseling, I don't think I had to wear what they wanted me to wear. You know, you hear this speech all the time. I don't think I had to wear what they want me to wear. Go in at what time they tell me to go. Stay as long as they tell me to stay. And leave when they tell me to leave, right? Like, I didn't think that was necessary.
Tell me when I can and when I cannot go see my children.
Exactly. Like, I used to beg to go eat lunch with y'all, or beg to go see y'all dance around the stage for 2 minutes or something. Like, so we obviously learned a lot, and being we obviously learned a lot from this book. I loved how many connections, like the apartment complex that he was standing in front of, like I've driven by there several times. Like I probably knew friends that lived in that area. Oh yeah, that was literally like right by my school. What's his name? We'll have to go in the area one time. We don't have nobody else lives over there anymore, so we haven't taken the boys over there. Y'all go to Daddy's neighborhood more than y'all see where I went to school at. So yeah, but we really enjoyed it. It was really cool to see a fellow Houstonian who grew up in the neighborhood that I went to school in, and went to the same church, and like somebody who I probably crossed paths with more than I realized, to have such a success story. Alright, so obviously Inspired, if you haven't already, which I mean it's been a minute, Daybron lost our footage of I kind of got discouraged about this one because I really wanted to put the clip of him talking at the bookstore, and so for the longest we didn't do it because I was like set on we're gonna find that clip and we're gonna put that in there, we're gonna put it in a review. So we didn't find it, and it's like, well, we read this book, I think I bought it like the day that it came out. I'm pretty sure I bought it the day that it came out, or I pre-ordered it and it got here before it came out. So if you have not already, which shame on you if you haven't, go pick up The Art and Science of Respect by James Prince. And we are the Rooted Readers signing off.
Stay rooted and stay reading. So let's go ahead and do this t-shirt cam. This is a different...
Oh yeah, t-shirt cam is a little different today.
So instead of
Houston music.
Instead of the Black History shirts, we actually have Houston shirts. So I have the Harden jersey, the Houston Rockets,
And mine says made in Texas. I don't have a Houston shirt, which I'm really surprised by. I actually started looking for some, but then I was like, no, like we're gonna go with what I have. So made in Houston, made in Texas, Houston to be exact. And we are the Rooted Reader signing off.